Hello and good morning or afternoon, wherever you may be. I'm Elisa Bogarts. I'm a lunch strategist and planner.
And I'm Kimberly Weitkamp, a marketing and messaging strategist, and super excited to welcome all of you to video number two in our
Yes.
in our series of lives, right? All around launches.
Yes. Last week we talked about dealing with overwhelm when launching because there's so much stuff to do. And just before we get started, I forgot to mention that today is Remembrance Day, and I believe it's also Veterans Day. And so just wanted to give a shout out to all the veterans out there and thank you for your service for protecting our countries, both Canada and the US.
Yes, thank you for doing what you do so the rest of the world can do the things like being an entrepreneur and having the freedom to do so. We wanted to do a quick shout out. Thank you very much. But it's not the same all over the world, and we talk to people all over the world. So we decided to go ahead and move forward with this.
Yes, yeah. So like I said, I'm a launch strategist and planner, and I help coaches launch their programs and events, and I help them do it with ease so they can really focus on scaling their business, is what we kind of start doing. And I help them go from feeling like super overwhelmed with just so much to do. And you can really feel lost of where to start, to being really focused and structured and organized. And I do this through a launch roadmap and technical implementation, meaning I really help you figure out everything that you need to do for your launch and when it all needs to get done.
And my focus has been for over a decade on helping people dial in their messaging to inspire the right audiences to take action and so they can really implement and help and support the people that they are wanting to be working with. So when we talk about messaging and marketing, it's not about well, how do I increase those percentage numbers for me? Mostly it's about is what I'm doing working so that I can get in front of more of the right people at the right time with the right messaging to make that bigger impact in the world. I love working with impact and change makers.
Love that. Impacted change makers. Yeah, like in talking about launches, I've been in the project management industry for I've been a project manager for about like 14 years and had my coaching business for about 4. And so I'm like this super organized planner person. And I use that project management experience and I put together some amazing plans for my own launches. And I've launched my own programs and gift giveaways and summits and a book. And even this year I launched a podcast as well. And I use my own plans and I use them with my clients and give them to my clients to help them with everything that they need to get done for a launch. Because if you don't get out there, right, if you don't launch your program and have the right messaging to get people to sign up, to get the right people to sign up, you won't be able to help the people that you want to help. And I know that I didn't get to help anyone after my first launch because I don't think I had the right messaging. And I had this amazing program, but no one was benefiting from it. And I've seen this with my coaches too, who are like, my coach friends. And we've been sort of in the same program. And they also, there's such amazing people. And there's so many people who need what they have to offer, but they're holding themselves back in a way. And I often think that the messaging can be something that can hold people back.
For sure. And I've seen it, across all kinds of instances, right? The big one, right, we talked a little bit about last week, which was always being in overwhelm or launch mode. So you're not actually getting the messaging out there. You're actually not getting the launch out there and not communicating with the right people. But I think it's very interesting, right? Both of us have had that experience of putting our all into the launch and then realizing something went wrong. And we're like, what was it? But taking the time to learn from that so that we can pass those lessons on to others, as opposed to, oh no, it went wrong. I guess I'm a failure and I'm going to quit. Like that's not the mindset to have. Instead, always approach any and all marketing as a test, right? And see what works, what doesn't. You can always tweak and pivot and do all the good stuff. But today, our focus is on the messaging that kills launches, right? You know, what is it that I know absolutely 100% I should avoid so that my launch will actually work well?
Yeah, you want to make sure that you're launching to the right people, right? And that you're talking to the right people and that your offer is really aligned with who you want to work with. I think that's really important. So you want to be sending out the right types of messaging. And yeah, anything else you want to talk about before we dive in?
No, I think that pretty much covers it, you know. If you're thinking of launching, yes, you should. That's the answer. But there's so many pieces, and that's why we put these series of lives together because I think it's one of those things a lot of us realize could be really powerful for our businesses, especially among coaches who, it's a great way to get a flood of people who want to work with you. But it can be intimidating. So that's why we're here to answer some top common questions and hopefully get you on that pathway.
Yes, yes. Let's dive in. So yeah, thinking about, messaging killers, what are the biggest sort of messaging killers you can think of that coaches, should be aware of when, they're launching?
Yeah. So, one thing I find that's really interesting, and I find this among entrepreneurs in general, right, is we're experts in what we do. And we're so excited to share that we've discovered this awesome thing that can improve people's lives, right? Whether it's, a way to get more time, whether it's a way to get more clients, whether it's a way to make more money, whether it's a way to have deeper relationships, whether it's a way to, insert whatever it is that you help people achieve here. We're so excited to share about it. And we kind of forget that we are experts in our field. And so when we sit down and do our marketing, oftentimes, especially when it comes to launches, we dive straight into here's what I'm going to give you. Right? Here's what I'm going to give you. Here's all the awesomeness that it includes. And it's 6 weeks of coaching and it's a training library of 37 videos and it's 16 different worksheets that are going to help guide you along. And you start diving into what we refer to as the deliverables, right? So a lot of messaging and launches I find that doesn't work focuses on the deliverables. Here's 6 weeks, here's 7 videos, here's 17 audios, right? Instead of outcomes. And this is not just unique to launching, right? It's also really common just in marketing in general. But we have to remember where our people are. So, oftentimes, what I find with launches is that the messaging isn't aligned to where people are in the process. It's not
Mm,
aligned to people who are looking for a solution or have a problem and don't know how to fix it. Instead, we're strictly talking about our solution or our unique branded, sometimes even trademarked philosophy that people don't know what it means, right?
mhm.
So if I talk about the leads on autopilot process, or if I talk about the 5C framework for getting marketing that converts every time, people don't know what that means,
Yeah.
right? Because they don't know what it refers to. They don't know what my definition versus their definition of some of the same words are. So it can be really frustrating for us when we're sharing all of this really great and fantastic information in our launch and we're getting crickets. And so what I want to remind everyone when it comes to messaging for your launch is remind yourself what the challenge is. Speak to the challenge, speak to the better outcome people want instead of listing out the 17 different modules that are in your launch, right? You're going to include that piece, but like if we're just going to give an example for a sales page, the pieces of your program, right? Where like you list out the modules or what you're going to achieve every week is like two-thirds down the page.
Yeah.
Right? That initial connection time, that time to get people excited, that time to build anticipation, none of that actually mentions the deliverables, the 6 weeks, the 7 modules, the 14 videos, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's so important because you really wanna, yeah, speak to them and you gotta remember all that. Because of course, yeah, people do wanna know sort of like the outline, but, even if you have, say, a 12-week program, they're not gonna remember everything, right? Like, as you're going along, maybe they'll remember week 1 or 2, but, like, to try and memorize all that, really you wanna kind of, like, evoke them and speak to them and get them excited about wanting to work with you, really, and what your program can do for them.
Absolutely. And that's the other piece of messaging to make conversions instead of messaging to send people away, right? Is to get people excited on an emotional level. So if you read through the very first pieces of any piece of your launch, right? Whether it's an email, whether it's a sales page, whether it's some social posts, are you making people feel something? Or is it strictly deliverable style copy, deliverable style messaging? And also, you want to have a balance. I find
Mm,
the other piece is that sometimes if people are focusing on emotions, it's all negative, Or it's all positive. And you want to have a balance between both because you want to remind people of how they feel. Maybe that's where the negative is, but also paint that picture of what the future and the positive looks like. So you need to have a balancing act between the two sides instead of all of one or all of the other. Because some people are like, yeah, I don't like making my audience feel bad. So it's all positive, but then it doesn't make them realize why they're not there yet. Right. So it's a balancing act between the positive and negative, and we want to have emotion filled messaging before the logic. Right. People buy on emotion and then they back it up with logic. That's
Right.
why the description of your program is 2/3 of the way down your sales page. But the first, 2/3 of it is emotion. It's painting a picture. It's really connecting with your audience.
Yeah, it's so true. You really want to connect with them. And so, can you share some common signs, that an entrepreneur might be launching to the wrong people, like to the wrong type of audience?
Absolutely. None of us have a crystal ball, unfortunately. So it is somewhat a matter of test and deploy. But I find if you can't explain to other people who you work with, most likely your messaging is not aligned. Um, so if people say, okay, well, who should I send you? Right? Like, let's say you're talking to a partner who loves what you do, and they're like, great. So who should I send you? And you say something like, well, anyone who, wants more money. That's a huge, big, glaring sign that you're not marketing to the right people because you haven't actually sat down to define it, right? Another way to kind of determine if your programs or if your launches are going for the wrong audience is to start looking at each step of the process, right? Do you get people who sign up? Do you get people who show up? Do you get people who say yes to buying? It's easy for us to say, oh, well, they just don't understand. And it's true. They don't understand what it is that you do or what the value is that you bring because something's off in the messaging. So if you're expecting 20 people to sign up and you get one, you have to go back and look and see, okay, where did that break up? And it's frustrating, right, to have to wait till the end, but you can do it at every stage, right? So the first time you make an announcement, do you get feedback? Do you get people saying, oh, I'm interested? Or do you get crickets? If you get absolutely nothing the first time you make an announcement, most likely that means something might be off in the messaging. So you can take steps before your official launch, which we'll talk about in a moment, to make sure that that doesn't happen, right? Another really great sign is the types of questions people ask after you've made that announcement, right? So if
Mhm.
you get people who you've made your announcement, your doors are open and you're getting questions. And the types of questions you're getting are from people who aren't at the right stage, right? So maybe they're like, it's a question on, for example, I know someone who works a lot with AI. So if she's getting questions from people like, what is ChatGPT? She has to ask herself, are these the people who are her clients? If they don't even know what the tool is, because that's like the most commonly known named tool, right? So if like
Yeah.
that's a no, then where do you go, right? Or, maybe you're somebody who focuses on relationships. Well, if you're getting questions around, well, how is this going to help my business? And the relationship focus you want to do is on personal relationships, something in your copy is attracting people who are more focused on the business and the personal side, right? Which could or could not be your ideal client, depending on who you want to work with. But those types of questions, just see what kind of reactions you get from people, and you can tweak and go. Right. So if you get something out there and you get no replies and you get no responses, you're like, well, something's missing. But here's the great thing, right? Especially if you're doing this on social media or something, it moves fast. All of us are bombarded with marketing messaging every day. We get something like 10,000 messages in a week or
Oh
some
my gosh.
ridiculously high number. I think that might even be low. I'm not entirely sure. But the messaging we see is everywhere. So if you put something out there and get crickets, guess what? No one's going to remember. So you can tweak it and redeploy. And if you get
Right.
somebody who replies back saying, wait, didn't you just make this announcement? Why are you redoing this? You can be honest with them and say, hey, yeah, so something was missing because I didn't get any response. So I talked to some people and this was what was going to resonate, or, this is where there was confusion. And so I reworded this so that people could understand what I was talking about, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But honestly, what we don't see from the big companies, that's the behind the scenes, is they employ teams of people and thousands to millions of dollars to test every single piece. And as entrepreneurs, we don't have that kind of cash, right? So the best method is, test and deploy, right? Deploy, evaluate, redeploy, evaluate. So those are just a few of the things to keep in mind when it comes to messaging. And if you're attracting the wrong people, is, how do they reply? What kind of reaction do you get? And just because you don't get a reaction doesn't mean it's a product they're not interested in. It probably means something didn't translate.
Yes, exactly. And I think also with messaging, there's, um, like, you're going to be sending out different, like, in terms of social posts, you could send out lots of different types of ones. And so some might resonate more than others. So just because one had a complete crickets doesn't mean, you can send out something even entirely different because that might really resonate with people. So yeah, never just give up if the one thing didn't work. Always keep posting, keep going out there. And also, yeah, like you're saying, like sometimes people just don't see it. We're bombarded, right? They may not have even seen it. I remember there was a woman and she does all of her stuff through social media and she posts every day. And she was talking about, I think it was a summit that she was doing. I think maybe it's like an in-person summit. And she's like, I've been talking about this, like posting about it multiple times a day, every day. And some people were like, oh, wait a second, you're doing a summit? Like they had no idea. And she felt like she was just constantly talking about it, but they just didn't see it. So yeah, and it wasn't
Exactly.
because of lack of interest. It was just because they just didn't see it. So,
Right?
keep
They
going.
didn't see it. Yeah. And that's the other piece that we can't control is who sees our stuff, which is why it's so important to have your own email list. Because then at least you can see, like, did people open it? Did people click on it? Did I get replies back?
Mhm.
And that's more in your control, right? But the thing to remember is we're all busy and we all have a lot coming at us. So just because the first time didn't get anything, you want to take your time to really evaluate.
Yeah, exactly. So what could someone do before their launch to see if, their messaging will land?
Great question. So here's the really unpopular but pretty much best answer ever, and let's talk to people. So if you're going to be launching, right, and you've got buy-in, right, you've maybe done this particular type of service before, and now you're going to, open the doors for lots of people, or people have been asking you for it. Those are all indicators that what you have to offer is what people want to buy. So that's a great starting point, right? But then how do you talk about it? So the easy method is to go to your communities. If you have a group, if you have a list, if you have just plain social followings, and go and post and say, if I were to do something around X, would you be interested? Or which of the following four topics would be of most interest to you in the next 30 days? Right? Start talking to your people and getting their personal feedback. Another great way to do it is if you're going to be launching within the next 60 to 90 days, for example, when people join your list, you can start asking the question, all right, what made you say yes now? What's going on in your life right now? You can ask the question, what about this topic is most relevant for you? You want to keep it open ended. But when you hit people at the height of emotional moments, like they've just opted in, they've just bought from you, they've agreed to get on a sales call, whatever those pieces are, that's when they're most willing to give you really detailed answers. So not everyone's going to reply, right? But it's something that you're already doing, so you might as well take advantage of it and say, "Hey, I've got a question for you. What would be most relevant, right?" But also, I mean, if you've got followers on social media, post a poll. Super simple to do nowadays, right? Which of the four things would be most interesting to you? And that's ways for you to test what part of your messaging is most relevant and what resonates, right? So it could be, the exact same content, right, is what you're going to cover. But which piece of it is most relevant? You don't know. So then you ask that question and you get answers. But of course, best option is to get people on the phone. So before you do a launch,
Mhm.
connect with people who are your ideal clients, get them on the phone and ask them a couple of questions about, what's going on in their life, what do they want to fix right now, what's the biggest challenges, what's most relevant, what do they feel needs to change in, the industry and the relationships and how people interact with each other. You have to always tweak it for your particular expertise, but if you can get real live human beings on the phone or on Zoom, right? Doesn't have to be a phone call. Um, that's the best way to get, really deep buy-in for the messaging. But the other ways are a little bit more passive, or if you don't have the ability to get on calls, or if you don't know who to get onto those calls, just going and asking your network, right? How many of us have like answered a poll really quickly, being like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll just give that one. That's super simple.
Yeah.
Or, we signed up for a really exciting lead magnet. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so stoked. This sounds so cool. And you get a quick question about like what's going on. You're like, oh, well, here's what's going on, right?
Yeah.
3, 7 words. It doesn't have to be super long, but it's very valuable, to start gathering that information as you go.
Yeah, and you can even also, in your networking events, I don't know about everybody else, but I seem to be in networking events all the time. And, you
Oh,
get
yeah.
put into breakout rooms. And so even in there, you could ask, those people, they may or may not be your ideal clients, but you can still just, start asking around like in that too, and having those conversations. Cause yeah, I feel like we're always on Zoom and there's always
Yes.
people to be talking to. And so it's kind of neat to get that feedback. But yeah, you do want to make sure that they are the right people because or else you could get swayed the wrong way.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, I got one final question for you. What's one thing that they can do right now when it comes to the right messaging?
Yeah, so right now, make a poll. Make a poll, put it on social. What are 3 or 4 common problems you hear from your clients? Or what are 3 or 4 things you solve in the program you want to launch, right? Let's say you're going to launch a program around money mindset, right? So what are 3 or 4 problems you hear from a lot of people? This is the challenge I have. This is the challenge I have. They may not be using the phrase money mindset, right? But they are using the phrase, I always feel like I can never get ahead of my bills, or I always feel like I'm stuck in this one, income ceiling. I've hit the income ceiling. I don't know how to break it. Or maybe they're going to say something like, I wish other people around me would think about money more consciously. Like, I have no idea. I'm not a money mindset coach. But what you can do, right, is think of what are the 3 or 4 challenges most people talk about that are solved by the program you're going to release, right? And this goes back to what we talked about at the beginning. Not to talk about the deliverables, right? It's not a 6-week program. It's not about the fact that you get 17 modules. It's what's the outcome, right? You're going to start tracking money, or you're not going to second guess every buying decision you make, or what is it that you solve? What's the outcome they'll receive? And then think of, okay, so what's the challenges that relate to that outcome? Put it out into your groups, into your email list, onto social, whatever's fastest and easiest for you. Be like, hey, can you do me a favor? I'm thinking of making a new program. Which of these would be most relevant to you? And see what kind
I
of
love that.
replies you get. You'll kind of be amazed at how many people are willing to answer you. And the answers might surprise you, or they might reinforce exactly what you think is correct. And that's great too, right? Do it without expectations, as in no expectations as to how many people will reply, but also no expectations as to what the answer might be. You want to be open to receiving whatever the answers you get are.
Yes, yes. And if they are slightly different than what you were thinking, you got to really be open and receptive to that and pivot if needed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Pivot if needed.
Yeah.
Keywords for every person doing a launch.
Yeah. There's always something you got to pivot with. Well, thank you so much. I really hope that everybody found this super valuable. And well, in a couple of weeks, was it a couple of weeks? I think so. November 27th.
Yes,
We
November
are
27th.
Yeah, we're doing an Ask Me Anything call. So if you have any questions about launching a program, about the messaging that goes with it, and and you kind of have some burning questions, Kimberly and I are going to be having an AMA call where you can come and ask those burning questions. And we also have something super fun right now. If you join the wait list now and register for the AMA, you could get a coaching session with each of us. So we're offering as a fun sort of like prize of people. We're going to be doing a raffle, and you could win a 30-minute call with me and a 30-minute call with Kimberly to get some coaching. So I would help you with your strategy and planning, and Kimberly will help you with your marketing strategy.
Yes, super excited. I've just dropped the link into the comments here, and we'll also post it later for those who are on the replay. But if you have launch questions, register for the waitlist for the AMA because we're going to answer your questions, right? That's the key. It's not about what we think you need to know about, right? It's all about what are your questions when it comes to launching. We were setting aside a huge chunk of time to get those questions answered. So join the wait list for the Ask Me Anything session. Super stoked to be doing that right before the end of the year, right? It's super exciting, and we'd love to have you there because I don't know about you, Elisa, but I get a lot of launch questions, so I'm hoping to be able to help a lot of people here.
I think so too. Yeah, and it's going to be direct. You can come and ask us directly, and we'll like work with you right in that moment and answer your questions. So, and I think that that's something maybe
Absolutely.
that doesn't happen all the time. So, yeah, I'm super excited to speak with you and answer your questions and help you with whatever it is that you may be wanting to know about launching and messaging.
Yeah.
Awesome. And
All
also come
right.
back and join us next week. We're going to be the third part of this three-part series, and we're going to be talking about all of the moving pieces. There are so many pieces to launching, and we're going to be talking about how to sort of deal with all of that.
Yes, how to deal with it all. And Lisa, thank you for joining us. Glad that you found this informative. Come back next week, right? We're going to talk about all the moving pieces. Be sure to register for the Ask Me Anything session, folks. We're going to have another live invitation, obviously, for you to join us. Put us on your calendar for the moving pieces of the launch, right? Because I don't know about you, Elisa, but I've definitely like had people doing a launch and then they realize something critical, like the payment processor is not attached during their launch. And that's not what you want to happen. We're here to chat about all the moving pieces next week and super excited to have all
Yay.
of you come and join us.
Yes, yes, yes. It'll be here again on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, the same time, 9:30 Pacific, 12:30 Eastern on Monday, November 18th. All right, we'll see you there. Thanks, everyone.